This specific topic, which is a subcategory Title IX, pregnant and parenting students, which is relatively new, keep in mind that this is a very small number of students, right? That you have, there's some point in time either a pregnant student in your classroom or that they are a parenting student with a child that's 12 months or younger, right? Because that is the eligibility criterion. And so this is a lot of information. You're going to say, isn't this a little bit overboard, Dr. Kerr, for these really small amount of instances? Yes, but clearly there have been federal and state concerns in our cases, and that is why, this with a lot of other reporting responsibilities and state and federal laws have come down this year with very short turnaround for institutions of higher education to get into compliance. And then third, I understand that we're online, right? So a lot of this, you're like, this is predominantly related to face-to-face class misses. And you'll even see that for faculty, one of the recommendations of best practices how to provide adjustments for these students in the classroom is that if an instructor is teaching face-to-face and the same course online, is to move that student into the online section, right? So again, a lot of this might be moot to our instructional method, but again, at any point in time, right, in your contract and our policy, it says we could ask you to teach the face-to-face class. Not likely given our loads. But, so you need to be ready and everyone has to receive the same type of training and have the same understanding. All right, so again, specifically what we're going to do here is try to understand the rules as written, including eligibility criteria for pregnant and or parenting students. Then there's some best practices of do's and don'ts in supporting pregnant and parenting students. Again, I did not write these slides, so if something's unclear, I apologize, but we will do our best to try to answer that together. Also, how to document and use. So what is your role as an instructor in helping the student with the documentation? Pregnant and parenting excused absence form and the adjustment form, as we just briefly pulled out of our packet. Don't worry, we're going to come back to those. Also, we're going to discuss some alternative strategies to help students complete their missed work. And really, this is where I want us to think, what are some other things? So help each other out with a discussion of this is what I do. That might be pertinent to these students as well. Briefly, we'll go through some common scenarios, which are also kind of test our knowledge about the content here. All right, so first of all, right, all of this falls under the Title IX Education Amendment Act of 1972. As a faculty member, that's all of us, right, you're responsible for being familiar and complying with Title IX requirements. Not shocking to you. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So that's 100% of our programs because we receive federal financial assistance and so do our students. Under the DOE regulations, a college or university shall, which means must, not discriminate against any student or exclude any student from a program or activity, including any class or extracurricular activity on the basis of the student's pregnancy, childbirth, false pregnancy, termination of pregnancy, or recovery therefrom. So any of those situations. So that again, think of that as your eligibility criteria for the pregnant individual. And then for parenting is defined as the raising of a child by the child's parents. Doesn't have to be biological, adoptive would be included here. In the reasonable immediate postpartum period, which is defined as up to 12 months after birth. Okay? So I would star those two slides. To me, that's step one, is are they eligible, right, for the excused absences and adjustments. Granting the student leave for so long a period of time as is deemed medically necessary by the student's physician. So again, we want to take out any guesswork on your part. That medical provider is going to tell us if there needs to be excused absences, how many, what date the student can return back to full regular learning requirements, if you will. If they need any physical adjustments, a special desk, frequent breaks, all that is going to come from the physician so that there is no guesswork on your part as the instructor. That is not your job to have to figure that out. Effectively reinstating the student to the status which she or he, when the leave began. So again, we can't penalize the student for what happened while he or she was out those days or weeks. They have to come back in the same academic standing, which basically just means they need to be allowed to complete all the coursework and assignments that they missed, which is what the third bullet basically says. Generally means the pregnant student should be treated as if they had a temporary medical condition, and I think for me that's the best analogy. and then given an opportunity to make up missed work wherever possible. Extended deadlines, make-up assignments, and incomplete grades should also be employed if applicable, right? So don't think, oh, well, every pregnant person is now going to be an incomplete. No, because this doesn't supersede, right, but works in tandem with our incomplete grade policy, which if you remember, we amended this last year. It was kind of vague. And so we put on there that you had to be in good standing, which means you're passing the class. I'm talking about incomplete grades now. Have to be passing the class, and you have to have pretty much completed the majority of the coursework. Someone look online, I don't want to misquote. But you can't show up on week 4 of a 16-week class and say, I need it incomplete. Right, so understand you still have the right to say, you know what, John, it's in your best interest if you drop. I understand that you changed jobs and now you can't get here, and or you had a car accident and now you don't have transportation, but that is not a eligible reason for you to have it incomplete. And incomplete means something happened at the nth hour, you were in good standing and it was beyond your control, and you completed the majority of your work, and all you need is a few assignments that you could do within the next few months before the next semester gets underway. Because that's the only way a student's going to be successful, right? So that still is in play. This works with it. It doesn't supersede our incomplete, right? And chances are, I would think the majority of our cases is if the student's just out a few weeks, that we work with them and they get back on track and they don't have to have an incomplete, okay? But this still, you have your full rights if that is what you think is best, because they can come back to you and say, I know I've already missed 3 classes, and guess what? I'm going to miss 4 more weeks, according to my doctor. There's no way they can miss that many credit hours, right? So they're going to need to drop the class, and of course, it would be a medical drop, and it wouldn't count towards their 6th drop. And we would do all the paperwork to support you and the student in making sure that that takes place.
It would or would not count as a 6th drop?
It would not count as a 6th drop. Mm-hmm. Okay, so on the left here is Title IX, and this screen is supposed to compare and contrast Title IX temporary medical conditions from like ADA long-term. So it's basically saying, it can be fuzzy. There can be a point at which a Title IX pregnancy and or parenting student could qualify here, but don't think that that is necessary. That is also very, very rare, okay? So Title IX, a recipient shall treat pregnancy, childbirth, false pregnancy, termination of pregnancy, and recovery in the same manner and under the same policies as any other temporary medical disability. So I would underline that. With respect to any medical or hospital benefit, service plan, or policy which such recipient administers, operates, offers, or participates in with respect to the students admitted to the recipient's educational program or activity. So again, you need to treat, if you, right, an example would be you give extra credit, right? Extra credit is extra credit. It's not required for your class grade, right? But if you give extra credit to your whole class, then your students who are out for sickness and or for this reason should have the same opportunity to do the extra credit, even if it was in class. Again, we teach online, so it's kind of moot. But you get the idea, so that we can't discriminate based on if they were pregnant or a parenting student. Temporary medical conditions. Should a student need a medical accommodation for a temporary medical condition not covered under ADA, please refer the student to the SAR office for assistance. So again, this is what you're already doing. So this is just a reminder of what ADA is, okay? They provide accommodations to students with temporary medical conditions. An example, the student's hand is swollen and the student is unable to write, then a note taker or another accommodation may be provided to the student by the SAR office. Nothing different there. Okay, again, these basic categories are communicating effectively with pregnant parenting students, promoting a harassment-free classroom for all your students, supporting these students through the process, and then providing the academic adjustments, because that is the main piece where your judgment as an instructor comes into play. Left-hand side is what we want to do if you consider those kind of best practices, and the right-hand side is what we don't want to do. Some do's. We do want to keep the conversation private and treat information confidentially, especially medical if any is disclosed to you. But again, you're not asking any questions about that. But we understand you have rapport students. They like to share those things about you because they trust you. So no problem. You're not in any trouble or compromised in any way because they do disclose things with you. You can't control that. Keep discussion focused on the course completion with open-ended questions, keeping the conversation going so that the two of you are on the same page. Ask to discuss their work and academic needs. Be empathic. Ask how you can assist in completion of any anticipated coursework. Stay in contact with them through the process and time period that they are out. Discuss options with them. Communicate clearly that a student will not be penalized for taking medically necessary leave of absences for these 2 reasons. The don'ts, of course, are the opposite, and I know these are very obvious, but I will read them anyway. Don't ask personal questions. Don't ask medical questions. Refrain from being judgmental. Don't make comments that may sound humorous about pregnancy in or outside of your classroom. Don't probe for personal information, and don't discuss absences or related to this situation with other students in your class. Promoting a harassment-free classroom, just some helpful hints. Pregnant and parenting students may face harassment and bias from faculty or classmates. Title IX prohibits the harassment of students on the basis of sex, which includes pregnancy, childbirth, and related conditions. Faculty must not harass or discriminate and must not permit either to occur in their classroom. So that is part of our jobs as classroom management. Students may approach a faculty member about problems attending class because of a complication from a pregnancy or postpartum recovery or parenting a child under the age of 12 months. When a student is experiencing a complication that will cause an interruption in class attendance, Title IX indicates the reasonable academic adjustment be made. And again, we're going to look through that form here in a minute. So, some examples of academic adjustments in that process. At TCC, an accommodation for a temporary condition such as pregnancy and related conditions is known as an academic adjustment. And we're trying to really make that our new language and vernacular so that we're not confusing it with ADA accommodations, right? Because those are accommodations. I know you might argue that that's just wordsmithing, that they're synonyms, but we're going to try to make sure we're talking about academic adjustments related to Title IX situations. Title IX requires the pursuit of options for the pregnant or parenting student to continue in the course whenever possible, unless otherwise notified by your SAR office. When working with pregnant and parenting students, the faculty member is responsible for working with the student and administration, so that's your chair, dean, vice president. We're here on your campus. Predominantly, those are who they're referring to here, to provide the academic adjustments such as course completion plan, alternate class assignments, or submission techniques using the academic adjustment agreement form to capture all of those. Continuation of adjustments. Faculty and staff must provide reasonable adjustments for pregnant students. Examples include larger desk chairs. Again, if they need that, that request goes to SAR. Devices, tape recorders, ability to make frequent trips to the restroom, ability to stand, move around in the classroom. The faculty member or student may contact your campus SAR office if there are other medical adjustments needed not listed here. I'm sure there will be. There are a number of variables that affect the next steps, so each case will need to be considered individually, and all information is communicated to the student. You, the faculty member, should talk privately with the student about the academic adjustments, meaning not in earshot of other students. The faculty member should consult with campus administration for guidance on how to proceed with the request before finalizing the academic adjustment agreement form. I would say you're seasoned faculty and that the ADA accommodations is a great set of experience and tacit knowledge to help you with this. So I don't think that your chair and dean require you to do this. If you're comfortable doing it with the student, great. But if you're relatively new or returning to higher ed and just it gives you more peace of mind to run it by your chair and or assistant dean, then I invite you to do that. But that is not a requirement. Because again, we know any paperwork can delay the student getting on with what he or she needs to do in the classroom. So we definitely don't want this process to add further burden to the student who clearly has a lot on his or her plate.
Sorry, I just got to ask
Yes.
for clarification on what you said, but I'm making sure I understand. So if a student comes to me and says, oh, Professor Park, I'm pregnant, I just need an extra day, I don't have to fill out the paperwork and send all that in. I can just say, okay, that's fine, it's not a big deal. Or do I need to fill out the paperwork just for a one-time accommodation?
I know that Dr. Coronado would say, because this is new, we need to fill out the paperwork, just as he said.
Not what I heard.
It's, yeah. If you the same way, it's like, right, remember when we do like if a student came to you and said I need for ADA or something that would fall under ADA, and you provided accommodation without getting that in writing from the SAR office, you've created liability for yourself and the institution, because say that student got someone to take notes for them for 5 days. Other students in the class would say, I want to have that too. Why can't I have that? And if that student wanted to press it, right, and then that wasn't documented, bam, we have a big problem on our hands. So sorry, but yes, if they need an accommodation for this reason, and they meet these criteria, then they would need to document that, which means it's on the student. Step one is they've got to get something from the medical provider that says, yes, that is true. But again, don't let this paperwork slow down what you and the student need to do. So knowing that she's going to be absent, I would go ahead and start working with her, making sure, you're helping her along the way while you're getting that.
Paperwork as an excuse is what you said. Not,
yeah.
I don't need to do it. Okay.
Right. Thank you for that. Okay. That's, the other form. Think about the relationship between these two forms of Venancio is the amount of time and the number of absences, the amount of time they're going to be out, right? If it is reasonable, and again, what is your rubric for reasonable? The same thing you've been using for all these years for a temporary medical condition. So in my mind, for my 20 years of teaching, that's about a week. If a student misses, but then we also teach different things. A lot of your classes have wet labs. If they miss several wet labs, those can't be made up, right? We don't hire someone to come in and reset up the wet lab for one student. We don't do that face-to-face either. So, there are differences based on discipline, but generally speaking, I think it's reasonable to say a week out, we can probably help them with different adjustments. But if we're getting to a majority of the time missed in the class, that's when, yes, we can consider not only adjustments, but consider the possible needing to drop. But we still got to document. That was your ultimate question. If they tell us they're pregnant or parenting and they qualify, then the medical drop is an option, but that's the evidence, the rationale as to why the person is eligible for the medical drop. If they agree to a medical drop, we don't need to edit these forms. They don't need to do them more than once. If they agree to a medical drop, follow our regular process for a medical drop. Okay. But that's my approval. So I've got to know from you and the chair and the norm, just like we do for anyone else that gets a medical drop. There's got to be the documentation so you're saying they won't have done this, right?
Said that a drop or an incomplete is an academic adjustment, which is a form that goes to you.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
maybe it's documented on the one that does stay in-house?
It should be, if that's what the final decision is, yes. Okay. Both of these are going to stay in-house. Both of these are going to be kept on file. Not here. That one's going to be in Dr. Coronato's office. Adjustment form resides in my office. It'll be filed finally there. The final resolution, the final adjustment. I don't want to use the word accommodation. Thank you, Allegra. Yes?
So, I know all the full-time faculty are going through this all right now, but as a chair with a lot of adjuncts, are adjuncts going to be a required?
That's why I'm being recorded. So we're going to stream this to them. And then I also just found out yesterday about 7 p.m. they finally completed a webinar that's the same thing as this. So if they'd rather watch the webinar than listen to me, it won't matter. But yes, we do need all of our adjuncts to complete it as well. They required us to do this during Connections Week. And so there were minimal time spots, so I had to pick at this time. There were literally nothing else. And so I understood that was going to knock out the majority of our adjuncts who have other jobs and can only come in the evening. And then my and Zena Jackson's recommendation, because she had several at Southeast Campus as well, yesterday during our VPA meetings, that Dr. Coronado will do an evening event and invite all them to it. So I think they're going to have two other options other than this streamed option that Austin kindly is going to put together for us. Thank you again, sir, in advance.
Also, Katika Harris' name is spelled differently.
Yes, and this is correct, so please change that to an A. And I love your attention to detail. And she would appreciate that as well, I know. Good catch.
I'm in a weird names club, so
Yeah.
not weird.
Good questions, guys. Go ahead, Venancio.
My second question was more on the front end as opposed to Angie's scenario was on the back end of the semester. We'll find out at the end.
Sure.
The front end, I know, and it's more of a scenario rather than, you need an answer, but we get, from time to time, we deal with faculty that are teaching kinesiology, and the faculty is informed by the student that they're pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I know in the past, faculty have kind of done a one-on-one, customized, depending on the course, depending on the length of the term. And it looks like this is now more an appropriate way of documenting that, where in the past it wasn't documented, it's kind of a one-on-one thing.
Yeah, it is. So A, good question. It's a great question, good example. And what you say we've been doing in practice is absolutely accurate. I think instructors because again, pregnancy is not an injury. It's not a disability, right? It's how we continue as a species. So we don't want to treat it as it is something that is, debilitating. You can't do things. But again, some people do get surprised by being pregnant, right? That also happens. And they're in a kinesiology class, and if it's aerobics and it requires extensive things, and all of a sudden they find because of their age that even jogging could put them at risk, then, yes, we encourage you to still work with them, but yes, we need to complete this, that we're all on the same page doing that. But I thought you were going to go, our discussion went a step further, which is a student is in your kinesiology class. You're online, so you wouldn't see this, but clearly very pregnant, like close to 7 or 8, 9 months. It's a jogging class. The student says nothing, asks for no accommodation. You are not supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to initiate a conversation about that. I know that sounds inhuman, but that is, again, part of this process is the student has to initiate those conversations the same way they have to for ADA. They don't necessarily have to initiate that to you, but they can do that to the correct office. But I hope you also know some students who do have ADA accommodations, they may choose to share that with their instructors or not. And they might choose to honor that accommodation in some classes where they need more time, but not their other classes because they don't want to be treated differently, even if it's just the instructor knowing. And that is their discretion to do that. So I mentioned that to say that's the same thing with pregnancy. Now, you and I know that's probably not the best judgment if someone is 8 months pregnant and their doctor has told them, or there's signs that they really shouldn't be doing any strenuous exercise and they choose to do so anyway. We went so far as to say, if this person falls down in my class and is injured, am I in any way responsible? And the answer is the instructor is absolutely not responsible. And our general counsel and everything else will protect you because it's the student's responsibility to ask for any adjustments for these reasons. So I know that's a long answer, but thank you for asking that. Yes?
I'm going to add on to that.
The students are also going to get required training. But if you can imagine, if this is hot off the press for faculty, that we're not going to hit all the students and get them up to speed with the correct education this semester. Hence, you're getting these type of questions. So God bless them for being proactive, but God bless them for, I don't know what we do in intro kines. What are the activity requirements? I'm not looking at you, Sherry, because you're psychology. But all right, some other just kind of clarifications, not really caveats, but again, just to help us with the big picture of this. Title IX requires a good faith effort. Underline that. Because again, you're going, wow, this is a whole lot of details. I don't want to screw up because you're also conscientious. You're not going to. Right? This is aligned with the kind of Good Samaritan rule. Right? You're doing your best, right, to help the student with the information he or she provides and or the physician has provided and has communicated to you of what is an okay adjustment to provide them. So that is all we're looking for here, but it is required. We can't just do nothing. So if a student brings it to your attention, you do need to lead them through the process, which again, step one is to share the website with them. Each case will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis when a program or course is believed to have requirements that do not permit a student to be provided an academic adjustment. If the pregnant or parenting student, I think the word student needs to be there, can't be provided an academic adjustment as determined by the VPAA. So again, if it's such a rare case that in your conversation with your chair, your assistant dean and or dean, up through me is so complex that we're not comfortable with the adjustment or knowing they need to do a medical drop, right, then we can refer that case to Katika Harris. Again, per your packet, there are lactation rooms across our college. So that is also on the website, so students will have access to that information. They may not know about it, though. The website will, when they go there, will provide that information to them in an easy to find manner. Just to recap, each case will require careful consideration based on the specific circumstances of that individual student. The primary consideration is identifying the course of academic adjustment will be the best academic interest of the student while ensuring the integrity of the course for the student. Underline integrity of the course, right? We can't get to the point where the student misses so much of the course that they do not meet the learning objectives, and they cannot because of the missed work. That is the situation when they will need to do a medical drop, and we will make sure that it is not count towards their drop 6 rule. Faculty are always encouraged to consult with academic leadership to ensure compliance with Title IX, right, to run those cases by your chair or your dean, right, and then we can also go outside our office to Dr. Coronado if need be. And this is more recap. I'll let you read that on your own. What information resources are faculty provided? That's a long list. Those will also be on the website, and they will be hyperlinks.